as well as to the pastors of the nation. The year was 1964. I was a pastor of a church at that time. And it was when they said, you need to consider the possibility of allowing the government to be a blessing to your churches. Would you please accept, and they asked us to. They didn't tell us we had to at first. I know I was a pastor, and I had to make a decision. They said, would you consider accepting a 501c3?
Not good.
And as soon as I begun to see what was in that 501c3 organizational status that IRS was offering to the churches, and a tax deduction for every offering that was given by every person in that congregation, I immediately sat up and took notice, and I said, wait a minute. I want to look through this a little more carefully. And then about a year or two later, my church had not joined because I saw through it. I realized they wanted to put a noose around the pastor's neck.
Control.
Control. That's the name of the game. It's control. And it was all put in by the elite for the purpose of taking God out of the schools, taking God out of the churches, and they offered it, and the pastor said, we will gladly accept your status. Just give us a blessing by letting our people remove this from their tax return every year. And they said, now you must take it, or those people cannot use that gift to the church. Then they came along and said, no more sermons. You see, years ago, pastors preached sermons every time we had an election. And they advised their people the status of the candidates. They told them what change the candidate was going to make when he said, I won't change. And they told them what the candidate was like and what his morals were like. Can't do that anymore. You don't dare mention that. They'll pull your 501c3 status, and you'll have the Gestapo on your doorstep in no time flat.
Your donations will no longer be tax deductible.
Yes. And so then they came along and said, you must accept it. And if you don't, then this is what we'll do. Mandatory. At first it wasn't mandatory. Then it became mandatory. Now you can't say anything. You'll forgive me, pastors. The average talk show host can give a better sermon than you can and get by with it.
Wow.
It's sad. What's taking place in our churches. I wouldn't accept it. I never did. Until the day that I left the church in Florida. I don't know what they've done since. But until the day that I left the church 12 years later, I never filled out the forms, never accepted the 501c3 status, and went on about my business. I didn't care. After all, where do I want the rewards to come? Do I want the rewards to come in heaven because I do what God says, or do I want the rewards to be given to me by IRS because I can take my tax deduction and that I gave to the church and get my reward from the state instead of getting it from God?
That's right.
So I never put it in an envelope and put my name on it whenever I give a donation in the church. Now, you'll forgive me, pastors, but you must face it. Then they had to change something else. They had to change the basic foundation of the United States of America. Ask the average congressman when he comes home for a town meeting what form of government we have, and what will he say?
A democracy.
Well, what are we?
A republic.
Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution of America. Please read it. I hope you have in your lifetime. Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution of the United States of America says, Congress shall guarantee to every state in this union a republican form of government. We are not a democracy. A democracy is a rule. A republic is we the people. A democracy is we the sheeple. And people have a choice that they can make. They can either be what our founding fathers intended us to be, or they can be a democracy, and that's what they have given us, because they wanted to take away our republic. They could not, under a republic, own General Motors and Chrysler Corporation. It wouldn't have been allowed back in those days.
Isn't that really a step in the direction of communism?
Oh, the CEO of... Oh, yes, it is socialism.
I agree.
The CEO right now of Chrysler and General Motors is the President of the United States of America. That would have never been allowed years ago under a republic. They had to change us to a democracy before they could take over our banks and our lending institutions. They've given them the money, therefore they control them totally. The name of the game is control. Remember it as long as you live, and then, here it is. You'll see a clip of it. A bold new world order.
Mm-hmm. It's not a new idea. President Bush talked about it back in 1991.
It is a big idea, a new world order where diverse nations are drawn together in common cause.
Nothing in the world but the same thing that Satan created in the Garden of Eden. A new method of trying to get to heaven his way, which never worked for Cain. It'll never work today. And the New World Order is what they're going to set up. I was told within 2 years, nearly everyone in America will be working for the government.
Wow. That's
Chrysler,
not good. Not good.
who do you work for? CEO is our president. General Motors, who do you work for? The CEO is the President of the United States of America. Banks, Chase, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, who do you work for? You don't work for the bank. Oh, no, your name's on the paycheck. But who really do you work for? The banks were given millions and billions of dollars in the bailout program in the last few months of President Bush's administration, and today the CEO of the banks is the President of the United States of America. And now, doctors, you may as well fold it up and go home. Because now the government will control every doctor, every hospital, all of our welfare, our systems of health in the United States of America will be under the control of the bureaucracy and of the President of the United States of America, and you doctors will no longer be your own bosses. The name of the game is control. There was a day and time when I was a boy that everybody wanted to either be an attorney or a doctor. They knew that's where the money was. You could make it. Can't do it anymore. Those days are over. You are now under the control. Before the election, you must notice, I mean, this is startling. Some of you heard my DVDs 2 years ago. When I first came out with what this man said, they were going $147 a barrel to $50 a barrel, and I told you everything that was going to happen that he told me would happen, and it's happened exactly like he said it. And one of the things he said to me was, he said, McCain is our man. And then later on, after the election, some talk show hosts came along and said, for the first time in 35 years you missed it. I said, no, I didn't. I said, they are not divine. You see, American people, you still have a chance. If you'll rise up right now, if you'll take action immediately, you can stop this. But 2 years from now, you'll never stop it.
Now, let's define rise up. You're not suggesting them using weapons. You're suggesting them using the Bible and turning to Jesus, the one that raised up our nation.
I'm suggesting that they ask the Lord what they should do and take it immediate action to do whatever is necessary legally within the Constitution to be able to get our republic back.
There you go.
We've got to have it. And you must do it immediately. You cannot wait any longer. You have a 2-year timeline as Americans, and after that, your children and your grandchildren, you have sold them into slavery. Now, I'm not going to pick any bones here. I'm going to say directly to those audiences out there, you have sold your